If it's my town and there's a handsome gentleman from the city sitting across from me, and I mean that purely in non-binary method, he has great hair. And when you get my age, hair is a deal, right? Unlike Mr. Davis over there who has still got a nice head of hair himself. Mine is disappearing.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of that.
Genetics.
But by the way, yeah, my daddy was bald at 50. Look, good morning to my favorite Tuesday guest, the man about town, as part of, I got to look up what we're calling this thing. Just
Taylor Roundup.
Taylor Roundup with Daniel Seguin, the communications impresario. How about that?
Impresario.
Impresario. You never been called. You've been called a lot of things, not that.
That's a big word.
Well, it is a big word. It's a big time in Taylor.
It is.
We just finished the election. What did I tell y'all how many people would vote? Do y'all remember that number? 300, 400 people? Sure enough. That's it.
Yeah.
Precinct 4, though, or District 4, as we call it in the city, is now occupado. Miss Long, when does she get sworn in?
She gets sworn in on the 17th.
The 17th she's sworn in, the 18th she's sworn at. That's how we do it, right?
I don't even know if it'll take that long.
Well, wow, I might get into it. Well, we need to get her up to speed quickly because we're right in the middle of budgets.
We are.
And she's got to get up to snuff. And when Greg gets back from his little break, poor Miss Long doesn't even get a chance to catch her breath. Like
the runoffs really make it challenging because we really push deep into budget season. Right. So you end up having to hold your breath for a good little while and then say go.
Yeah,
and everyone's running.
Well, and going to have to be. Greg got a chance to take a little time off. He and his bride,
indeed,
and do a little trip up north and catch their breath. The mayor's up in Montana. I talked to him yesterday. So he's catching his breath before everything.
Yeah, he'll be running into the meeting on Thursday is what I hear.
I bet he will, Gosh, it's a lot of stuff to do.
There's a lot going on.
You boys did not bring raincoats.
We didn't. We forgot again. Actually, I brought my vehicle this time.
You did?
We walked last time, and we were stuck asking for a ride from a fellow employee.
Were you really?
We were standing out there
waiting.
waiting.
Did you get the official car? The motorcade came and picked you boys up.
An official City of Taylor vehicle.
Really, it wasn't the trash pickup, folks. I hope, because that would not be a good look.
Well, riding on the back of those vehicles, I got to say, my heart goes out to those fellas who got to do that in the middle of the heat.
But how about
the rain.
wearing the safety vest? You didn't even have a safety vest.
That's
true. You couldn't. No way you could have done that. That's
very
breaking
true.
Several rules. Well, it's been a week since we've last talked.
It has, and we had a tragedy in Taylor in that week.
I know.
And I have to talk about it because my heart breaks every time I see something like this. And
Paul Leal and I talked about it. I think one of his troopers was the first officer on the scene. And in case you don't know, Daniel, fill us in.
Well, one of our wonderful residents from the Main Street Commons was crossing at the crosswalk at Carlos Parker and Highway 95.
Motorized scooter.
On her motorized scooter.
Mm-hmm. Seen her many a time.
And unfortunately, someone ran the red light and hit her, and she was killed.
It's a tragedy, and it was what I'm told, allegedly, it was an enraged driver that had been tailgating and all that stuff and pulled up to the light, didn't want to wait on the light, and went around the car and at an increased rate of speed. And no way would they have known that there was a crossing in front of her because it was a red light, and the lady in the chair was in the right. She had the right to cross at that time, and somebody in a little too much hurry with a little too much whatever ended her stay here.
Yeah, it's mind-boggling. I didn't even know some of those details that you just shared.
Well, you ought to listen on Mondays when we talk police with the constable.
I should. But I talked to a few of the folks out there already. We're going to be doing having a conversation with residents out there tomorrow morning. But, you know, it's not even that she didn't have access to a vehicle or
she did
another
everything
way across.
right. What, nothing,
Yeah,
just
it
wrong
was just
place.
she just was getting out, getting some air,
Wrong
enjoying.
place at the right time.
Yeah, so it's hard because we want to cast blame. You know, as human beings, we want to point fingers and try and say so and so should have, could have, would have. You know, but a tragedy is a tragedy, and
it is.
And
it was
it's hard
clearly marked, and
Right.
clearly she had the right of way.
she did.
You know, and you
Yeah.
can't fix stupid and moronic when it comes to every driver.
Yeah,
And we live in a world now that every time I'm on 35 or even 79, you see some road rage
oh yeah,
by somebody.
oh yeah.
You know, we've lost the ability to be cordial.
Well, and what folks don't understand is they're driving a weapon. They're not
That's
just
absolutely correct.
It's not just getting, you know, and behind like a golf cart and just doing a cozy little afternoon drive, right, and having some fun on the track, right? You're driving a weapon in a public space with no real boundaries. There's paint on the ground that tells us where to
but
be.
there's no railroad type crossing where the bars come down and block your forward momentum.
Yeah. So every time you get behind that wheel, you're potentially putting not only your life but the lives of hundreds of people around you at risk. If
Well,
you're
I
not
hope that this wakes people up.
Yeah.
To pay attention and slow down, and it's not anybody's fault but your own that you're not getting there when you should be.
Yeah.
Take your time.
I mean, someone lost their best friend.
Somebody
Someone
did.
lost their mother. Someone lost their sister.
Well, I don't know the story behind the lady, but I'd like to know.
Yeah.
Because I'd like to honor her here for what happened. If she's got family here
Okay.
or that, I'd love to hear the story about her because I've seen her and stopped for her on 95.
Yeah. All I can do, you know, after an event like this is just, you know, it really wakes you up and makes you think about your life, but
Well,
also
it certainly does. Makes you appreciate that you got to, you know, carpe diem.
yeah, absolutely.
Look at that, a movie quote.
Another big word.
Tuesday, another carpe diem.
Carpe diem.
Look, I got a couple questions for you. We had our Chamber of Commerce meeting yesterday at 3, and I guess we have a new format.
Okay.
You didn't have to attend yesterday. We got updates from Julie Downs on real estate, what was going on in the real estate world. Then we had another report from our friend over at the foundation.
Yes.
You know, so
Diana Phillips.
Diana Phillips. We got her report yesterday, and I guess the next one you're up.
That sounds good.
And we've run out of speakers at these luncheons, Jay, because now they want me to do September.
Oh.
So, yeah.
What you going to talk about?
I don't know. It's going to be a surprise to all of us, I'll promise you. I'll walk up there and think of something witty. But, you know, we'll talk about media changes and how everybody wants to be a keyboard cowboy.
Yes.
You know, and how everybody wants to hide behind the keyboard and fire bullets.
Especially our cave people, our local cave people, the citizens against
virtually
everything.
That's right. Cave people. But, you know, we'll talk about, you know, how everybody now has become a publisher of sorts. And it's not like the days of when there was radio, TV, and the Taylor Press.
Right.
You know, those were your three news.
Well, and the water cooler.
Well,
you know,
but you usually got that from TV news, or
Sure.
you got that from the radio, or you read it in the paper,
Right.
And you just expounded your opinion on it. But you really, that's as far as it went.
Sure.
Now you can reach 2 or 3 people on Facebook, depending on how big your audience is. Lord, I just pulled our numbers yesterday, showing somebody in the last 90 days, we've had 1 million people come through our Facebook page and Instagram page.
Wow.
You know, we got almost 19,000 regular followers. So we're very careful about what we put out in news. We don't get into the national stuff because you can find that information anywhere. And we cover state news when it makes sense. Like we busted some shops over school vouchers here, and then there's some things that the governor's waiting to sign, like this Stop the Slop legislation over dumping where the rural counties are step kids to these bigger counties like Travis. And they want to bring all their problems into the rural community, and the rural community is finally pushing back.
Yeah.
But anyway, what were you going to say, Jay? You had that look of.
I was just going to note that we touch on state and national issues that have a local impact. That's really the way we try to approach it, and that's what people should really listen for.
From the news desk of Jay Davis. Jay's right. But anyway, in our meeting yesterday, they talked about the Taylor Main Street program and where are we on hiring a future person to head that program.
Yeah, Steve, I think we've talked about it a little bit once before, but our Main Street program right now is intended to serve specifically our downtown area, our downtown businesses, to help support them, give them the resources that they need, hopefully to be successful if they have a good business plan and focus, help promote those businesses, do a little bit of additional marketing for them, and then also focus on beautification of our downtown, making it more attractive for pedestrians, getting some more foot traffic, attracting folks from out of town.
There's some foot traffic right there in the alley. So they heard you and immediately started walking.
And the position and the department's evolving. So we're realizing that tourism is a really important component when it comes to economic development, bringing in those outside dollars from other communities to be spent here in Taylor, not just on hotels, but that is important, but also spending in our downtown businesses, other businesses across the city, engaging in interesting activities, adventures, local finds, so to speak, right? How do we attract those folks who have the funds to travel, who can spend them here, and then those dollars then get passed around and regenerated in Taylor and provide additional value to
like
folks locally?
4 or 5 times $1.
Yeah, I believe on
rotates.
average. So if you think about someone spending $5 here in Taylor, it really is more like putting $20 into the economy.
And that funds Little Leagues and American Legions and festivals and other businesses. Like if I go down to the coffee shop with you and buy you a cup of coffee, then they take that dollar and they go down to Taylor Office Supplies and they spend it there. And then Taylor Office Supplies orders shirts from 74 Man Store.
Right.
And then they go over and buy some salsa from Ansara.
Right.
So that's how the dollar rotates.
And they pay their employees, and then those employees go and buy groceries
no,
here
they're all
local.
Don't you know that's his son? He's working for free. Just ask him.
Okay.
Moses will tell you. He's barely getting by.
Well,
but you're right.
And so if we can, that's really the dream, is that we bring in some of these outside dollars into Taylor, that they can bring some additional prosperity to our community. And then, from a city perspective, right, we'd be increasing our sales taxes.
Sure.
And if we increase our sales taxes, we have more funds to spend on police, on fire, on streets,
and it
everything
also
that's
lowers
funded.
your property tax.
Oh, thank you for bringing that up, Steve. Yeah. So for essentially a quarter of the sales tax we bring in goes towards lowering property taxes. I think the number in the last budget cycle, what people are paying now, is about, on average, $600 per resident that they're saving because sales tax is buying down their.
Well, in the car business, we call it pump in and pump out dollars.
Okay.
Pump in dollars are when you take a car sale from somewhere else,
yes,
and you do it here, and then if you lose a deal, let's say it goes just the opposite. They buy a car out of town. That's loss dollars, pump out dollars. So we want to grow our pump in dollars.
Yes.
And minimize the pump out.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And one of the ways that we do that, which is quite unique, is we have, when these big companies come into town and they're doing major construction projects, we have what's called separated contracts. And I'm sure Ben White at Economic Development could do it a lot more justice than I can. But what it essentially means is that when they buy concrete and steel and other products for their construction project, they may buy them out in some other city buy them in Austin or some other community, and use them for their construction project here in Taylor. But the way the transaction happens is as if the sale was made in Taylor. So sales tax, it's called use taxes actually, stays here in Taylor, and those funds get used locally.
Well, there was the legislature years ago were battling destination sales tax, right? And Round Rock, having Dell Computer, back when Dell, I think, actually made computers, laptops, and all that you could order online, there was a big debate. Round Rock got all the sales tax because it was origination sales tax versus destination. And, of course, everybody figured out what was going on, and there was a huge battle about taking those dollars away from Dell and charging them to the ultimate destination.
Right.
And I think that the city of Round Rock did a pretty good job of keeping it as long as they did.
Right. Well, and ultimately, those kinds of changes benefit small communities like Taylor because there are a lot of folks who have moved to buying things online, right? And so now when they buy something online, they're still benefiting their local community with those sales tax dollars to some degree.
Does your household, notice how I phrased that, your household buy a lot of online?
Unfortunately, yeah. You know,
it's frustrating, isn't it? Because you see those boxes coming in. We all know who we're talking about without talking about them. We need more retail. More retail generates more local sales.
Right.
More local sales generates more retail.
Yes.
And I bragged yesterday about your, and I don't know why, because he and I started off on the wrong foot, but your planning department head.
Yes.
Tall guy. What's his name?
Well, I have bad news
from Maine
around that, but
is he leaving?
He is. Scott Dunlop.
Where's he going?
Oh, we don't know.
Really? Well,
yeah. So
half of me says dang, and half of me says dang. So I mean, it's oh well.
So Scott Dunlop is no longer with us, but we have an interim there, and we'll be hiring for that position.
Well, he did bring a lot of retail, not necessarily the right. Brought a nice HEB and Lowe's and those kind of things
to Manor.
Yeah, to Manor. So, and I drive by Manor and I look at all that and I went, well, he did something right. I don't know why he couldn't do that here, but oh well.
Well, and a lot of folks think our development services department has a lot of control over who comes and when they come and why they come, but ultimately what retail needs is they need residential.
Well, they need
traffic.
Need foot traffic. They need car counts. They look at car counts. They look at
your population,
population growth the last 10 years.
Yes, and then also your service area surrounding the community, right? And so
it's coming. Rockdale, Thrall, Thorndale, Taylor, Hutto. It's coming. Yeah. I mean, just wait, because I've been here long enough to remember when the railroad track still crossed 79 in Hutto, and all the grain silos were used, and the trains and all that.
Well, it's hard today because average residents, we see the effects of expected growth on our property tax dollars, but we don't necessarily see the expected benefits as quickly. And so that's one of the challenges.
Well, there's a lag.
There's a lag.
There's always going to be a lag of, depends on what it is, 2 to 3 years, right?
Exactly.
But you got to prepare for it now. And that's one thing that I will say that Taylor has become very progressive in thinking out into the future better. Your project out at the airport is done, it looks like.
It is. We actually had a couple of projects out there. So we had our Mustang Creek drainage improvement project. So we're working on some detention out there. That's complete.
Yep.
And then we also were redoing a lot of the ramp and expansion of the ramp at the airport as well.
Look, before you came along, before I really was that involved, Taylor had the opportunity to get that regional private airport out there that's on 130 off of it. If you've seen that going to the real airport, they wanted that project here.
Oh, wow.
Originally. And Taylor said, no, thank you, kind of deal to that. So, but our airport, congratulations. You just got, I read your airport folks, now you can pump gas directly from the airport?
You can.
Storage tanks and all that?
And that's really important for our airport. That drives. They don't have fees to land at our airport, right? Some airports do have
like
fees
Georgetown
to land.
has fees.
Georgetown has fees. Austin Executive has fees.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have fees, right? So the way that we recoup our costs is two ways. One is through leasing our hangars and tie down space, and the other is through sale of fuel. And so we did have fuel tanks before. They went down, and we were out of fuel tanks for a couple of years there as we tried to get new ones installed, and we were selling out of a mobile truck, but things just weren't working very well, limited hours, etc. So now we have a lot more traffic coming through already because of that fuel.
Does that airport have the ground space to expand?
There is some room for expansion, yes.
And
in fact,
runway?
we have an airport master plan.
Yep.
It includes room for a longer runway. In fact, we already have property for a longer runway.
So you have two active runways. Or would you just extend the one you
We
have?
would just extend, and it really is two, right? So you have 17 and 35, I believe it is.
Well, that's just...
And they're opposite directions, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's depending on which way the wind's blowing.
But I don't know that we'll ever be large enough to have multiple runways. That's a good question.
Well, it'd be interesting to see what...
But we'll see. Right now, the airport master plan doesn't project out having two runways, but it is looking
do you have it projected where the roller coaster effect doesn't, smooths out a little better?
I wish we could affect the sky and make changes to
but you do see when you're driving by, when you're landing, it's got a little...
There's a little
hill. In there. You kind of go low.
That's a good question. I'll have to ask our our airport professional of the year.
That's right.
Stacy Batch. She's our airport manager, and she was awarded by TxDOT Airport Manager of the Year.
Wow.
Which was huge. And so...
do we have a control tower?
We do not. No, it is not a controlled airport.
So eventually that'll be an upgrade, right? Control tower.
You really have to get to...
That's an FAA thing.
There's FAA standards on how many actual operations takeoff and landings that you have on a daily basis to have one. And I believe we would have to increase tenfold or more.
Okay. Now, I did not... we were talking about everything that you weren't planning on today. I get that. So what were you planning on talking about had I not...
I really wanted to do a little bit of a part two to our conversation about Samsung last week because we didn't really get to everything that I wanted to share.
Well, let's get into it.
We mentioned the sales and use taxes and how when folks are doing construction, we're getting some additional revenue from that construction, from the sale of those materials. So one thing that's wild to me is in a typical year prior to Samsung coming, we would get around $5 million a year in sales tax.
Okay.
We've gone 3 years in a row with somewhere in the neighborhood of $15 to $30 million a year in sales tax for 3 years in a row.
15 to 30 from 5. Is that what you just said?
That is what I just said. For 3 years in a row.
And what would you do with that money, young man?
Here's what's amazing. We've done some. That's where folks haven't realized we've done some really great things in Taylor with those dollars. So first off, we want to make sure we're being good stewards, right? We're not using these dollars for things that are recurring expenses like people because the expenses fluctuate or the income fluctuates.
Would that be a rec center in the works from that money?
Well, I'm going to talk about what we have done with it and then talk about possibilities for the future as well. So one of the things we did right off the bat is we separated out half of the receipts to put into savings. Because
rainy day fund.
That actually is one of the reasons why, if you remember last year, our credit rating actually increased.
Because you had a rainy day fund with...
We have a lot more funds on hand. Yes. I think the average city is trying to keep around 3 months of operating expenses in the account.
Smart.
And we were approaching a year's worth of expenses at one point in time. And so what did we do with those funds, though? So the rest of the funds, obviously, I mentioned earlier, a portion of those funds go to pay down property taxes. So that did happen. And then in addition, we used some of the funds for animal shelter renovations. We completely renovated the library meeting room, added new furniture, new equipment, made that functional for public meetings and streaming. We improved the roads at the cemetery. We replaced school zone lights. We added the pickleball courts at Murphy Park.
Woo!
That's a big one.
Jay and I are going.
We added the new cemetery software where folks can actually look up folks who have been buried in the cemetery and see when they born, when they were died, what their name is, possibly a photo, and then they can see an exact GPS location of their gravesite so they can go find it easier. We've bought so much equipment for public works. So if you've seen our Level Up program, we talked about that on the streets segment we did. The Level Up program, right, provides that smooth riding surface over top of a really old and dilapidated street. And so used to, when we had that program initially, our guys were literally shoveling asphalt and tamping it down by hand. Or
not
tamping
rolling
it down.
They
They
were
were
not rolling it in and doing it right.
Right. They were not using a big machine to hot lay it. They were laying it cold. And that's similar to what a lot of counties do, right? They mostly, well, I say by hand. They'll also use, a backhoe and that sort of thing to lay it down. But it's cold laid. So now, because of those use taxes, we were able to get the professional equipment and the training that our staff need to be able to hot lay asphalt. And that improves the quality of the finished product. It also improves the longevity of that finished product. So these streets that we're doing with the Level Up program are lasting longer for no really additional cost in the yearly budget unless we want to do more streets, right? Because the materials are the same. It's just how we lay it down.
Well, whoever did 2nd Street.
It's horrible.
Huh?
It's horrible.
You weren't here 10 years ago when it would knock your fillings out on 2nd Street, and it's a lot better than it ever was.
Yes,
since I've been around.
Yes.
So,
but for those who are frustrated with it, because there are some frustrations, we are in the warranty period with our contractors, and they're actually going to be redoing a lot of 2nd and 4th.
Congratulations! You're holding their feet to the fire.
We're holding their feet to the fire, making sure we're getting the best use for those funds.
All right, so keep going. I want to hear more about how what you've done with this.
Sure. So that was just the one piece of equipment that I mentioned. We also got a lot of new backhoes, dump trucks, things that we had 30, 40-year-old equipment that we were still in use that we were able to get replaced.
And this weekend, did we not have a push-in of a new fire truck?
Thank you for mentioning that. We did.
You're welcome.
Yeah, Fire Engine 3. It replaced, do you remember, Jared, how old that fire engine was? I believe it was from
in the 70s or 80s, I think, I read.
It was at least 30 years old,
if
not older.
It's been a while.
It's been a long while. So Fire Engine 11 is the one it replaced. So we got Fire Engine 3. And this equipment, really, a lot of cities are replacing it every 5 to 10 years.
And that's $1 million+ for one of those, isn't it?
Now it is. That truck we ordered 3 years ago.
Okay, so it took 3 years to build.
It took 3 years to build and to get here. I believe it was around $700,000.
Okay, so
but that's a very basic.
That's $1 million time you equip it and get all the stuff in it.
And that's 3 years ago, right? So today that truck would be over $1 million.
Well, what I want to know is what you do with the old one.
That's a good question. So typically, cities like ours, we auction it off to your volunteer fire departments who need something
I don't need that, but I thought, how cool would that be as a radio station vehicle? Being able to go to remote and squirt everybody with water.
It's going to be a public auction, so if you want to buy it,
$1. $1. No, I would not take that away from a volunteer fire department that desperately needs that, because their equipment, you think your equipment's dated.
Right.
A lot of these volunteer fire departments are running on, a shoestring and baling wire.
They are.
So
a truck like this is a huge opportunity for them.
Was that a ladder truck?
It was not.
It was just a straight.
It was just a basic engine.
Basic engine.
Yes.
So you're buying fire equipment, public safety.
We are.
Equipment.
We actually have a ladder truck on order. It's well over $2 million.
Yeah.
And that's going to take another. I believe 2027
will
take delivery of that one.
Is that for something like a Samsung multi-story type thing, or just to get a better attack on a problem?
Yeah, a little bit of both.
Down.
Yeah, you do need, if you have a multi-story property, you definitely need a ladder truck. But then also, I've seen many fires that have benefited from being able to get above
because you get above
the
the fire itself and shoot water down.
You're exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's huge.
How about
benefits.
police cars? You buying any police cars in this go around?
Let's see. In the last year, I believe the number is 8 cruisers that we've replaced at the police department, all using one-time use tax funds. Mm-hmm. And that's incredible because
those aren't cheap anymore either.
They're not, and most departments are having to just keep fixing ancient equipment, puts them off of the road for a period of time, and and really cost a lot of man hours that they could be out on the street patrolling. And so it's really important for us to have updated and new equipment. One of the biggest things, Steve, that we did with those funds, if you remember back in 2022, I wasn't here, of course, but in my community we struggled with this too. We had a major winter freeze.
Oh, yeah, snowcalypse.
Yes.
Snowcalypse.
Well, 2021 was the snowpocalypse, but in 22,
That's what I meant to say, snowcalypse.
We
That's
had
an eclipse.
in 22 we had a lot of ice, and that damaged so many trees across the community, limbs down everywhere, trees down everywhere, power lines. Yes. And if you can believe it, we spent $5 million cleaning up after that 2022 storm.
Remediation of tree damage.
Yes. And so luckily we had a lot of those use taxes that we had set aside and saved that we were able to spend to clean up the community with those dollars. But otherwise...
And this was when you were collecting $5 million?
No, this was right after the use taxes skyrocketed, right after Samsung began construction.
So is it projected to be this year?
Well, it's projected to be lower, as you might imagine. So because construction has slowed down and the Samsung is waiting on a customer to begin to purchase and manufacture chips.
But they're also waiting on some equipment that's being manufactured. All this stuff is, you don't go to Amazon and order it. It's custom made for.
It's custom made in the Netherlands. It's the only place that you can buy it. There's one company that makes the equipment to manufacture chips.
And if you ever want to know the real inside skinny about chip manufacturing, Commissioner Russ Bowles can tell you how and what the evolution of what Samsung was originally going to make versus what they're now projected to make, which is twice as fast as they were, and the number of switches and chip. And he gets glossy-eyed, and it's almost like Jay. It's almost like Jay in a honey bun. His eyes roll back in his head, and he just starts. And I'm so proud of him that he knows all that stuff.
It's amazing the technology today and how complex it takes. In fact, I had the pleasure of an honor of getting a tour of the Samsung Austin facility and getting to see just how complex
it's
that
unbelievable.
Space is. It's
those
mind-boggling.
clean rooms are, NASA grade,
or even more. I mean, they cannot have a single grain of dust interact with those chips in the process of making them. Not a single.
Then they have to throw the whole batch away.
It's shot.
It's contaminated.
Yeah, and one of those, you've seen those videos
wafers?
or stock footage with the big wafers, right? They're like a foot across, just about, and those have hundreds of chips on them. So one of those wafers will produce hundreds of devices, and a little piece of dust is all it takes to ruin the whole thing. It's mind-boggling.
There's a joke about Kansas that I want to bring into that, but I won't. But the song "Dust in the Wind," Kansas. That's how old we are here.
Yep. So one of the other things that we've been looking at after those winter storms is how do we make sure that critical city facilities stay online during those storms?
A lot of Generacs.
So what we've done is with those use tax dollars from Samsung, we have been able to purchase additional generators and then install at all of our buildings essentially the interface that it takes to plug in a generator. So they're actually mobile generators. We can move them around as needed.
But you've got you just plug and go.
You just plug and go. And then all of our, water delivery equipment and all of our sewer collection equipment, lift stations and things all have generators now installed as well. So because of those use tax dollars, we've been able to increase our capacity to survive and maintain operations through storms, which is really valuable to this community.
Have you helped ERCOT keep their stuff online? That's an inside joke if you don't know who ERCOT is. And I'm probably going to get a phone call after this show talking about don't bring up ERCOT.
So that's just a handful of some of the biggest things that we've done with those dollars. And so I hope folks, their big takeaway of this is that while there's not as many visible in front of your own home changes from Samsung, there's an incredible amount that has gone into improving our operations and improving our capacity and ability to respond to storms, and also our ability to do road work, and also our ability to respond to emergencies with our police equipment, fire equipment. We've really essentially taken our city and our operations to the next level because of the funds we've been able to receive in use taxes. And so
Many blessings in a lot of places.
Many blessings, indeed. And I've also got a spreadsheet with all the donations that Samsung has made to the Taylor community, and it is well over
It's staggering.
$4 million just in, into all these different organizations, the school district especially.
$1 million for one program I'm aware of.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, millions upon millions. So when folks, I see, you see those keyboard warriors on social media, and I just want to grab them and say, this is one of the greatest things that has ever happened in this community.
Well, in this state.
In the state, in the country,
in the
even.
State. I mean, look at how it impacts not only Taylor but Rockdale, Thrall, Thorndale. Look at the property that's going in. Look at this new thing that this steel company,
yes,
from the Carolinas,
yes,
moving here because they've heard about Taylor, Texas.
They have,
and
that right there is a perfect example of us working to diversify and not just have all of our eggs in the Samsung basket, so to speak.
That is, it's skilled labor, but just in a different variety. And I think your partner's dying in there. We probably, want to take. You know what? Let's take a little break, Jay Davis. Catch our breath here because there's a couple of things I want to wrap up with you, and then we'll call it a Tuesday right before the storm hits. It is our town. It is your town. It's everybody's town. Doesn't matter what town you're in either. So while it does for you, that's correct, but for everybody else, it's our town. We live, play, and work around here, and a lot of things going on at the city. It's not unlike a lot of places where summer you slow down a little bit, you catch your breath, and then fall hits, and you're playing football again.
In the summer, we take off running, especially street projects, parks and recreation. I think we talked about before, we have a street project on T.H. Johnson and Lake Drive. Those are going to be kicking off really here shortly. T.H. Johnson will actually kick off next week. For residents who are interested, we're going to be doing a public informational meeting on Thursday. We'll post a recording as well on our website, but more information coming out later on today about that meeting. So a lot going on.
And we have a swearing in next week.
We do.
The 17th for Heather Long. Congratulations once again. That makes our record perfect. Every candidate that has won their office has advertised their message and their story right here on us.
Now,
you can look that up.
Steve, didn't they all advertise?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, they did not. All the losers didn't.
Oh, wow.
The losers didn't, but the winners all did.
Okay.
Just hint, if you're thinking about running for office, come talk to us. We can help. What do you got planned this summer? You got anything big, you and your fam?
We do. We're going to go down to Corpus, enjoy the beach a little bit, just as a family. Actually, never really got to take my full, parental leave, you might call it these days, paternity leave, whatever. Spend time with a newborn. We had back in February. We had our second son, and so
I remember that.
Yeah, and because we were in the middle of a transition, hiring our amazing Jared Kingery as our communication specialist.
You mean the guy over there running the cameras?
Yes,
that nearly choked to death a few minutes ago.
It happened to be perfect storm timing, so I didn't get to take time off. So I'm gonna be taking a little time off here.
Are you going to go
June.
see the restored Battleship Texas?
We are.
We're
not going to see that because the Battleship Texas isn't back open yet, is it?
You can certainly see it out in the.
We're going to go see in Corpus. They have a aircraft carrier.
Well, that's the Lexington.
The Lexington,
USS Lexington.
Yes, I'm really excited about that.
The Lady Lex. You know what her nickname is?
What is it?
The Blue Ghost.
Oh.
The Japanese named her the Blue Ghost because she was damaged in World War II in the Pacific and thought to be out of action. Oh, nay. She came right back. They retrofitted her really quickly, and she reappeared, and the Japanese nicknamed her because she came out of nowhere.
That's amazing. Well, I'm really excited. I get to show my son the Lexington, and
it's really a cool thing.
It's going to be a great experience.
It's really don't bang your head on a bulkhead because you're sort of tall, and people back then were shorter.
Indeed,
they really were.
Indeed,
I don't know why, but that is go there, and you got to go to the Moody Gardens in Galveston, maybe or right up the road.
Well, we won't go that far up. up. We're gonna try to stick it. We only had a couple of days, so we're gonna stick right there in Corpus.
Good for you.
It'll be
good for
great.
you. You're going to eat at the famous Italian restaurant?
Oh, I hadn't heard about that. What is the famous Italian
It's right
restaurant?
there. I'll have to look it up for you later, but it's a mob-run Italian restaurant right there.
Interesting.
On the day of Corpus. Nobody called down there and tell them I said that, okay? But, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of fun to do in Corpus. There's a beautiful beach that's halfway between Corpus and Galveston.
Okay.
That is just unbelievably crystal clear water and all that. I hope you get good water and no, you don't get to be a tar baby.
Yes.
Growing up, we all went down there, right, and ran across the beach, and that oil created the tar, and you catch some tar on your feet.
Well, and somehow I think we'll be good this year because the timing we're going. But all past years growing up, when I'd go down to the Galveston area, we'd end up going right after a hurricane, man, and the beaches are just a disaster. But yeah, we're really excited about that, and we're really excited here at the city. Just the tremendous amount of projects we have going on. You mentioned Putt Putt. I don't know if everyone's heard about it, but Putt Putt is back
Miniature
open.
golf. Putt Putt is like saying Kleenex. That's a branded trademark.
Well,
but it's miniature golf. Clearly, I have it on your press release that you put out about
okay.
that
All
is, you
right,
know.
Steve,
I know, but
I
look,
hear ya.
how many people call, hey, pass me a tissue? No, give me a Kleenex.
Yep.
What kind of Coke do you want? Dr. Pepper.
Yep.
You know?
Well, it was gonna be Xerox. Making a copy was called Xerox.
Xerox. You make a
for a while,
Xerox of this for me.
That luckily they saved themselves and
But
now aren't popular. But
the all kidding aside, you can either use, the city has putters and balls that you can check out.
you can.
And that process, you just have to show an ID
Yeah,
that you're
and
local.
And it's 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. So if you wanted to putt on the weekend or in the evening, you can. You just got to come check it out before they close.
Or
and then you
bring
can bring
your
it
own.
back. Or bring your own.
Bring your
Right.
own balls.
Right.
Bring your own putter.
Yes, yes. And the for those interested, since we're talking about Murphy Park, the Doris Rosnovac Aquatic Center, Rosnovac, is coming close. We're about to do the second concrete pour. So they've poured the very base of the pool, the underside. They poured all the piers, and now they're about to pour the walls of the pool. So
Well,
it's
by
really
next
shaping
year,
up.
we'll be swimming.
We'll be swimming.
And do not swim in the lake, I'm told. Mayor told me it's about 2 foot deep, and you don't want to step in that stuff.
Well, and if you can imagine what all ended up in that water from our beautiful, largest inland rookery in the nation, there for all of our birds.
You know, I am so write that down, Jay. Today, we heard the word rookery on the radio station. And for those of you that don't know, explain what a rookery is.
A rookery is basically just a big spot where a bunch of birds come to nest, is essentially what it is. And so the egrets are the largest population there, but there's all kinds of birds.
They're called cowbirds.
Okay, well, cowbirds.
Yeah.
Sure.
I'm sorry,
works.
I'm just picking on you. But if you've ever driven out in the country and seen an egret standing beside a cow, and there's usually one per cow.
Right.
They eat the bugs and things that the cows stir up when they're grazing.
Yes.
They're smart animals.
Yes.
Smart.
Well, I always enjoy driving by and seeing there's one on every cow. That always
Yeah,
cracks
on
me
the
up.
back.
Yeah, they're on the back of the
Sure,
cow,
well,
just
they're
hanging out.
checking for flies and all
Yep.
that. They're very good partnership.
Yep. But yeah, they're seasonal. They're migratory birds. They're protected, and it's really an amazing resource that we have in Taylor. They can be frustrating at times, but we get a lot of folks coming from all over the country to see it because it is such an incredible sight.
Well, if you've never seen a mama duck and her ducklings crossing over there by the chamber, that's something to see because mama just waddles and everybody stops, and the little ducklings follow right behind the mom. There's always that one that's at the tail end going, I don't know if I want to go. I think I'm going to stick around here for a while. Mama has to come back and get your tail feathers up on the deal. But look, we thank you for coming in. Let's get Tyler in next week. I want to update on parks and park department activities for the summer because, now that we've caught our breath after school's out and officially we're in that summertime, all out, all in, all done kind of thing. We need to make sure we remind people of what what's
yes,
available.
and folks should definitely go to our website, taylortx.gov, and see our calendar of events coming up. We have a lot of things at parks and the library that they're doing all throughout the summer. So I know my wife is tracking books read by our kids, or to our kids, I should say, because they're young enough, because there's prizes and things,
yes,
too.
there is
So
at the library.
there are.
I've won that contest before. I really have. I loved to read when I was a kid because there wasn't anything else to do out in the middle of nowhere but read and fish and shoot guns. So, listen, my friend, thank you for coming in today.
We'll see you
Daniel
next week.
Seguin, ladies and gentlemen, and all those listening boys and girls.